G'day there, ladies and gents of the internet. Mark Wallace here from Econisis. Hope you're all doing well. It is the third week of November 2023 when I'm recording this. I'll be releasing it either this week or next week. But just in response to an article in the Australian Financial Review quoting figures from the OECD that looked at the disposable income of Australians and the fact that it has declined precipitously over the past 12 to 18 months, corresponding with structurally high inflationary rates in Australia compared to increasingly abating inflation in other parts of the OECD. We saw incomes during the COVID period generally hold up pretty well, if anything accelerate, as the baby boomers took the advantage of COVID to start to exit the labour force and move out of the workforce entirely, which placed a lot of pressure, coupled with the decreased population growth due to border closures on the labour market and driving up some wages. But this wage increase was not a cyclical wage increase in the sense that it wasn't just in response to the short-term effects. It was actually in response to pent-up wage growth suppression, that wage growth demand that hadn't been met over much of the previous decade, particularly in the post-GFC environment. One of the things to understand is that the previous coalition government, had an active wage suppression policy and stated so that reducing wage growth was a critical part of their underlying economic strategy, and that was a tenable strategy while we had a low inflationary environment. However, the problem with when you look at the figures, and you look at the figures that were published in the AFR, that shows that since the GFC, after the significant increase or significantly higher position that Australia found itself in disposable income terms during the GFC because of the stewardship at the time of the Rudd government, that our growth rate in income had slowed significantly and resulted in the rest of the world catching up pretty much prior to the GFC. So what we've had now is that when you have such a growth rate that is suppressed, and instead growth occurs in effectively shocks to the economic system, you then get wage growth starting to have a much higher impact or correlation with that of inflationary pressures. So instead of having steady year-on-year growth, if it's just at one particular time, then you end up in a situation where your inflation, the wage growth can have and economic constraints can have a much greater impact on the overall economy. Now, what we've had now is a significant decline in disposable income in Australia as a result of inflationary pressures remaining high because of that move from a steady approach to wage growth into something of almost a boom-bust cycle imposed by the previous government. The problem with this is that there is no easy fix. Apart from seeking to blame the current government, there's going to be, unfortunately, a penchant on the part of those who are no longer participating in the economy from a productive perspective, not that they really did to begin with, and that is the boomers, to look to move further to the right and to reintroduce the government that caused this problem to begin with. The solution is wholesale economic reform. The problem is that will require a much more centre-left government than the current centrist government we have, and that's going to require the Albanese government in particular to move back to the centre-left, away from the centre, or almost centre-right in some cases when it comes to their underlying economic stewardship. Very much in the power of a Labor government to do so. In fact, almost all economic reforms in Australia have been under Labor governments because of Labor governments tend to be the ones that do things, while centre-left governments tend to be those who are more of the stewards who don't really do anything of an intervention nature, which is fine unless the system breaks. And unfortunately, this demonstrates that the system has well and truly broken. So unfortunately, we're now in a situation where not only is inflation causing real disposable income decreases, but we're also seeing the Reserve Bank and their increasingly positively correlated inflation responses through monetary policy adding to that pressure and worsening the economic conditions. So we've got a full decoupling now, a full two-speed household sector between that of boomers and that of everybody else. And as a result of that, we're seeing some pretty drastic dramatic outcomes, negative outcomes starting to flow through to the productive part of the household sector, being younger workers under the age of 45. But that is it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a wonderful day. See you next time.